Hello everyone and welcome back to the sessions on CFA Level 1 Quantitative Methods. In continuation of the topic time value of money, if you can recollect, in the previous class we have learnt about the concept of net present value, NPV. In this class we are going to focus on attempting questions based on NPV concept. So you have learned how to determine the present value of a single cash flow, or even present value of a series of cash flows, or even present value of annuity. All these things you have learned. So when you initiate a project or a business, there will be a series of cash inflows that will happen at a later stage, and then you will have to identify that there will be some initial investment required to start the project or investment. That's the only new thing that you have to consider while computing NPV. So basically you have learned how to determine the total present value of a series of cash inflows. That will be the total present value of cash inflows. Your initial investment becomes the total present value of cash outflows. If the cash outflows are not happening just at the initial stage, but say initially over 1 or 2 years, then you compute separately the present value of cash outflow. Then you compute NPV at the end by simply taking the present value of cash inflow and the present value of cash outflow. So what I would recommend, suppose I give you a scenario where you have a series of cash inflows and series of cash outflows, and I ask you to determine NPV. So what do? You first compute the present value of all the cash inflows, put it in storage 1, then you compute present value of all the cash outflows, put it in storage 2, then recall 1 minus recall 2 would give you NPV, because NPV conceptually is the present value of all cash inflows minus the present value of all cash outflows. So let us begin with the example straight away. Now in continuation with the series of examples, the next upcoming example is example 13. Let us read this example. It says, a project has life of 5 years. The cash inflow in the first year is $8,000. The cash inflow in each of the further years will increase by $200 as compared to previous year. The applicable rate of interest is 12% per annum. Cost of the project is $26,000. Determine the NPV. So this is just going to be very simple if you identify how to solve it. Let me help you with the solution over here. You plot a table. For each year you identify cash inflow along with its discount factor and multiply the discount factor to its cash flow amount, and you get the present value of that cash flow or the discounted cash flow. Every year cash flow is supposed to be $200 more than the previous year cash flow. That is what informed. So first year cash flow was $8,000, then $8,200, then $8,400, then $8,600, and finally fifth year it will be $8,800. When you add up all these, you get the total present value of future cash inflows. Now to compute NPV, you take total PV of cash inflows minus total PV of cash outflows. The total PV of cash inflows is this, and the cost of the project, which is reported to you as $26,000, becomes the total PV of cash outflow. So simply 30,117.61 minus 26,000, that will result into $4,117.61 as the NPV. Let us now quickly try to put it into your financial calculator. So the steps that you have to perform. So please, one request, as I have always been requesting earlier as well, do not bother to write the steps while I am explaining. I'll separately give you time to note down the steps. So let's deal with the steps where you turn on your calculator and press CF for cash flow. Then press second and CEC for clearing all the cash flow work. So it is this second switch and CEC. Now this is nothing new, you have been doing this. What is new is, in all the questions earlier, if you remember the initial CF0 value, that is cash flow of 0 year, we were not doing anything over there. We were just moving ahead. We used to start making input of the cash flow from first year, that is C1 or C01. So now what happens? If you right now observe on your calculator screen, after doing this step, it would be CF0 equals to, you have to put that value, and that value will be 26,000 negative. So what you should do is, you input 26,000 and then at the bottom, this last switch in the bottom, just before the equal to sign, can you notice this? It is plus/minus, that means it is a sign changing button. So what you do, input 26,000, press plus or minus, so what will happen, the sign will change. So effective input will be negative 26,000 and then press enter. So let me guide you in detail with the calculator steps. So input negative 26,000 and press enter. Thereafter, press the downward arrow key once, then input 8,000 for cash flow of the first year and press enter. Now you know one thing, after you input the cash flow of the first year as 8,000, I am sure you can recollect how we have learned earlier. The moment you enter the cash flow first year, it will store it as C01 equals to 8,000. Now you need to press the downward arrow key once and it will ask you the frequency of that cash flow. Because each year cash flow is recurring only one time, the frequency by default is 1. So when you first time press the downward arrow key, it will ask the frequency with default value as 1. If you don't want to change that value, just once again press the downward arrow key. That means we are going to press the downward arrow key twice and then we input the second year cash flow. Same procedure what we have learned earlier. So let me again help you with the steps further. So press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, then input 8,200 and press enter. Once again you press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, then input 8,400 and press enter. Again you press downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, and input 8,600 and press enter. By now we have input of 4 years cash flows, 1 more year left. So once again you press the downward arrow key 2 times and input 8,800 and then press enter. So 2 times downward arrow key, input 8,800 and then press enter. And once you have done this much, you again press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, and now while you have done it twice, it is asking for input of 6th year, where 6th year cash flow we don't have anything. So you press NPV. So you press NPV and it will ask for input of the interest rate. So input 12 over there and then press enter. Then one time again downward arrow key, it will again disclose NPV, right? But on the screen the answer won't appear, it will show NPV equal to 0. Don't consider that as your answer. NPV is not 0. You need to press this button, that is CPT for compute. So lastly press CPT and then you are ready with your result. Your result on the calculator screen will disclose NPV equals to 4,117.61. Let us move ahead and take up another similar example. Example 14 in your book. Let us read this example. X Limited is planning to invest $15,000 in a project at present. The life of the project will be 5 years. The annual cash flows over its life are estimated below. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and annual cash flows given. You are required to compute the net present value of the project if expected rate of return is 15% per annum. So there is nothing different compared to the previous example what we have seen. So I'll just guide you through the solution. In your solution, you make one table with each year's cash flow converted into discounted cash flow or present value of cash flow. And when you are done with all the 5 years cash inflows converted to their present values, you add up all these present values of cash inflows, and from that you subtract the PV of cash outflows. That was the initial investment required in the project, and in this one table itself you can present the net present value. Now you know one thing, that in examination you don't have to write all this stuff. You are, however, encouraged to write it down while learning the concepts, so that you should be able to understand what all calculations are coming into effect. Now how to do this on your calculator? Definitely I am going to guide you ahead. Let us move ahead and observe how to do this calculation on your financial calculator. So the steps that I am explaining, first you apply these steps and do your working as and when I am explaining to you. While I am explaining to you, avoid writing the steps. Later on I will give you time to note down the steps. So the first step would be to turn on your calculator and press CF for cash flow. Same steps. Then press second and CEC for clearing the cash flow work. So second and CEC. Thereafter, input negative 15,000 and press enter. I have explained to you how you do that. You first input 15,000 and then push this button of plus or minus. This is a sign changing switch. So the positive 15,000 will convert into negative 15,000 and then press enter. After that, you press the downward arrow key once, then input the cash flow of 4,600 as for year 1 and then press enter. Now you know one thing, that the moment you do that, it would have now stored the cash inflow of first year. When you press the downward arrow key once, it will demand the frequency. Again, the frequency is 1 year, which is set as a default on your calculator. So if you don't want to change the frequency from 1 year to any other number, you just twice press the downward arrow key, then input the second year cash flow as 4720, then press enter. So what you have to do, twice press the downward arrow key, input 4720 and then press enter. Then again repeat the process, press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2, then input 4860, that is a cash flow for third year, and press enter. Likewise, again press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, then input 5000 and press enter. 4 years entry done. Now for the fifth year, you again press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2, input 5200 and then press enter. Now you need to again press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2, then press NPV, and it will demand the input for the interest rate. So input 15 over there for I equals to 15, and after doing that simply press enter. Then once again you press the downward arrow key, and then for computing the NPV you just press CPT for compute, and you get the result as NPV equals to 1208.61. Now let me take you ahead to the next example. Example number 15. Now guys, I am not going to solve all the examples for you. You need to do something on your own. So I don't want you to write up the solution in your notebooks in the traditional manner without using your calculator. Don't do that stuff. I want you to directly pick your calculator. I'll give you 2 minutes time. On your own, you try following all the steps and compute NPV for this particular example. You should be able to do it yourself within 2 minutes time. I will be showing you the detailed version of solution, the written proper structured solution, which is not required from examination viewpoint, but just for your understanding. Then I'll show all the steps on your calculator as well. Most important thing that you need to do is you need to check whether you got the correct answer or not. I will give you 2 minutes time and your time starts now. So let me first show the solution to you. I'm just putting the values over here. These you would not have done, but precisely the answer what you would get this time is a negative NPV of 2422.32. Now for your reference you may take note of this, but most important thing for you is, did you get the negative NPV, that is a negative value of 2422.32 or not? That is the most crucial thing. Let us observe the steps on your financial calculator. So first thing that you need to do is turn on your calculator and press CF for cash flow, correct? Then you need to clear the work done earlier. For that, press second and CEC. So second and CEC for clearing your work. Then input the 0 year cash flow as a negative 23,000 and press enter. Then push the downward arrow key once, input 5,650 and press enter. Then press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2. Then input 6,720 and press enter. Thereafter, once again press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2. Input 6,910 and press enter. Then once again press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2. Input 7,000 and press enter. Once again press the downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2, and input 7,200 and then press enter. Thereafter once again you press the downward arrow key 2 times, 1 and 2. Then you press NPV, and the moment you press NPV, it will demand the input for interest rate. This time the interest rate is 18, so input I equals to 18, and then you would want to press enter. Then press downward arrow key only one time. It will disclose NPV, where NPV value will be 0. You know the fact that NPV is not 0. You need to compute it, and for computation you press CPT, and you will obtain the result on your calculator as NPV equals to negative 2422.32. Let us move ahead to the next example, that will be example number 16. Now this is little different if you carefully read. X Limited is planning to invest $20,000 in a project at present. The life of the project will be 8 years and the annual cash flows over its life are estimated to be $4,920 per annum. When we read $4,920 per annum over 8 years, it is the implication of annuity, and they have given you the expected rate of return as 15% per annum. So first of all, if it is annuity based calculation, you have already learnt how to deal with annuity. So you can compute the annuity factor, multiply that to the annual cash inflow of $4,920, and you will be getting the total present value of cash inflow. From that you subtract the present value of cash outflow, task done. You get the NPV. Now when you are using your financial calculator over here, it is going to be very quick, and I'll show you how to deal with that. But let us do things one by one. Let us first write up the solution in the detailed manner. So in your solution you please write PV of an annuity at 15% for 8 years is 4.487321. So total PV of an annuity will be 4920 into the annuity factor, and that gives you 22,077.62. So we call that as total PV of future cash inflows, 22,077.62. From that you subtract the total PV of cash outflow, that is $20,000, and you get the net present value as $2,077.62. Let us move ahead and look at the steps on your financial calculator. Now the steps begin in the usual manner. So you turn on your calculator and press cash flow, that is CF. Thereafter, for clearing the work done earlier, you press second and then CEC for clearing the work, second and CEC. Thereafter, you input negative 20,000 and press enter for CF0 equals to negative 20,000. When you press enter, it is taking the input of CF0. Now, after pressing enter, you press the downward arrow key once and then input 4,920 and press enter. Then you press downward arrow key only once, and now it is demanding the frequency. See, first time we are finding that same amount of cash flow is recurringly occurring every year. It is going to occur every year for 8 years. That means the frequency of that cash flow is 8 years. So what we have always been doing earlier, we used to press the downward arrow key twice because we want to skip that frequency part, because by default the frequency would be 1. So right now when you would have input 4,920 and press enter and you press the downward arrow key once, what will happen? It will demand the frequency starting with F, and by default the value over there is 1. You want to change that 1 to 8, and when you change that 1 to 8, because frequency is 8 years, you will be finding that all 8 years input is done, correct, because frequency is 8 years for that particular cash flow. So in case of different amount of cash flow, each year's cash flow was feeded as an input separately with frequency as 111. In case of annuity, you input the cash flow once and as many number of years that you set as frequency. So let me again bring forward the screen in front of you. So you press the downward arrow key once, input 8 and press enter, and then you press downward arrow key twice, 1 and 2, and then you press NPV and make the input as 15, I equals to 15 for feeding the interest rate, and then press enter and then the downward arrow key once, enter and downward arrow key once. It is ready to compute NPV. Just you need to press the compute button, that is CPT. You do that and you obtain the result as 2077.62.